right now I'd like you to keep them there for handy reference. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, we're all going to face the front.
Good morning, Mr. Lennon.
All right.
All
What we're going to do today is we're going to discuss the homework assignment that we had. We're going to talk about the Great Depression. All right. Now, first of all, what is an economic depression? No money.
No money, no jobs.
No jobs. What are some other characteristics? Excuse me? Now, we have materials. There were market shortages, that's true. But certainly no money, massive unemployment. Farmers
Less demand.
had huge surpluses. Stock prices crashed. The stock market was in the basement.
Less demand.
Less demand for what? There was less demand in the sense that people didn't have the money to purchase the goods that had been produced. So markets were all out of whack. The stock market crashed totally. Farmers had huge surpluses. What were farmers doing with their surpluses? They were, of course, they were trying to sell them, but
Find ways to keep it.
they were dumping their goods. Dumping in the sense of actually destroying portions of their crop. Well, certainly farmers could use a portion of their crop for themselves, but you're talking about enormous quantities of crops. You're talking about thousands of bushels of wheat or hundreds of thousands of pigs or chickens or something like this. There's no way that farmers could consume all of these things. So the farmers, in an attempt to drive up price, were trying to destroy a portion of the surplus. Because farmers, as small businessmen, what did we say before about farmers as a class? Farmers are economically okay, they were poor, I guess, as a group, but there was one other thing. When we talked about the farmers, the Populist Party, we said most of the farmers were not alcoholics, no, they were debtors. They're in debt, okay? And farmers in the 1920s were in debt as well. In order to pay off their debts, they've got to sell the crop, they've got to make money. And they weren't able to do this, so if you can't pay your debt, what happens? Your farm is taken away, it'll be foreclosed, you're off your land, and many thousands of farmers during the 1920s would be foreclosed, and farmers, of course, wanted to avoid that. So what we're having, what we're seeing at the end of the 1920s is an economic calamity, something called the Great Depression. And I want you to realize what the Depression was like in the sense of its characteristics, the high unemployment, the stock market crash, the economic dislocation where the markets, the farmers' markets, for example, are just totally misaligned. All right, and it was an economic calamity, it was an economic catastrophe. Historians have said that there were two great failures in the American system. One was the Civil War. The second one was the Great Depression of the 1920s into the 1930s. Okay, it was a catastrophe in every sense of the word. So, your homework assignment was, what were the causes of this Great Depression? Let's see, and then pick on first. Eric. Unemployment, is that a cause or a result? What were the theories as to the causes?
The causes of worldwide economic disorder that followed World War I.
All right.
Decrease in trade, high tariffs,
tariffs were raised to their highest level ever with the Hawley Smoot tariff. And what did the European countries do with their tariffs? They raised them as well. So worldwide trade would come to a halt because of our high tariff rates and because of the European countries reciprocating and doing the same things with their tariff rates as well. Certainly, I think they did. And one of the theories as to one of the causes of the Depression would be the worldwide economic disorder after World War I, where high tariffs, loans that were given, the war debts. There was certainly a great deal of economic dislocation caused by World War I. So certainly that would be one of the theories. What's another one? Yes. All right, excessive borrowing. When we talked about, or your book talked about the stock market crash. Okay? The stock market crash, excessive borrowing in the stock market crash. A lot of the consumer demand during the 1920s was generated by installment buying. All right? In other words, installment buying. You bought items, you paid $1 down, you paid $1 a week, that sort of thing. You were in debt. Excessive borrowing certainly is another theory. In the stock market, with the stock market crash, did any of you run across this concept of buying on margin? Yes. You borrow money to buy the stock, and there was a lot of borrowing and speculation in the stock market as well. Why would you want to do that?
Because you get the profit.
If it goes up, sure. Yeah, and during the yeah, you lose the money plus the interest. Well, let me give you an example. Anyway, this concept of buying on margin. Well, I don't know if it's gambling or not, but during the 1920s, many people were in fact gambling on the stock market. They were buying on margin, which is still done today. All right? Let's say you want to buy a share of stock. We'll take a company, let's take one of your favorites. Kmart. Okay? And that's something you just remember. AT&T is another one, but I don't know that. But anyway, here's a share of stock. Let's say Kmart costs about $20 a share. Let's say it costs about $20 a share. All right? And you want to buy 200 shares. Well, how much would that cost you? $4,000. And you don't have 4,000, right? 20 times 200, it'd be $4,000. And you don't have that much money, but you have 2,000. So you say, okay, look, I'll pay 50% of the purchase for the stock, and I'll borrow from the broker for the other 50%. Okay, this is called buying on margin. You put up a certain portion of the money, and this way I can control more stock. Okay, it's a practice that is done today. If the value of the stock goes up, it's a wonderful way to buy a stock. If the value of the stock goes down, however, then you might have some difficulty. You might have some difficulty. You might have studied this in the class. The idea is, what is your security for the loan? The stock itself. The value of the stock that you have paid in. So what happens if the value of the stock falls?
Then you still owe more.
You owe more because your portion has become less valuable. You must have 50% of the value there. So your portion has become less valuable. The stockbroker will call you up and say, you have to give me more money because your portion of the loan is now less valuable because the underlying value of the stock has fallen. All right?
paints your house.
No, he sells the stock. He sells the stock. You have lost your portion of the money. He does not want to lose his. If you don't give him more money, or send him more money to keep your percentage of value in that stock at that level, then he will sell the stock. Okay? Do you understand that? It's still done today.
The 50%, and then
But you've lost your money.
you have to add money, you have to contribute money.
You had to pay interest on the loan. He calls you up and says, the value of Kmart fell to $10 a share, okay, or whatever. He goes, oh, no, I need more money because your stock is worth less. Say, I need more cash to keep that 50% level.
But he
there."
still loses on it.
Very little. He sells very quickly. When it gets to that point, he calls up and says, I'm selling it. Do you have more money? He says, no, goodbye. And he dumps it. Okay? You've lost yours, and he does not want to get stuck with it, so he will dump the stock into the market very, very quickly. Buying on margin is still done today, and it's an okay way of buying stock as long as your percentage of value is high. Chances are the stock's not going to fall $20 to $10 a share. U.S. Surgical, yes. Your group was involved in that stock buying thing. And I think U.S. Surgical was selling for like $125 a share.
Well, at the time it was about 61, and then in front of about 70.
Okay.
It did drop down to about 62 at the end of the month.
Well, that's $9 or $10. It's not $50. It's not, falling from $20 to $10. There was a stock in the stock exchange yesterday that fell from $16 down to $6.
Wow.
Okay.
Who was that?
It was a drug company. Centocor or something like. Well, what they did was they had a new drug and they were testing it. I don't want to say experimenting, but they were testing the new drug, and they said their results were unfavorable. And I think the line they used was that there was an excessive amount of mortality in one of the groups. The patients would die. And what happened is, of course, investors that had the stock sold immediately, and the price just went from 16 down to 6. And that's quite a drop. And if you did, yes, the New York Stock Exchange is basically a place where the buyers and sellers can exchange the stock. So for some reason, we all run to the phone and say, sell. What happens to the price? It just falls until people start buying it, and the price of stock can fall considerably in a very short period of time. IBM stock, for example, in July, IBM was selling for $100 a share. Yesterday, I think it was $48 per share.
So you wait till it falls and then buy it.
Well, you don't know when that's going to be. You don't have a crystal ball, or you're not a fortune teller to say, well, I know at this point, we don't know these things, but that's what happened to that company. So if you had 10,000 shares of IBM
So it's good to buy.
at $100 a share, and you watched it fall to $50 a share, obviously you lost a great deal of money. And somewhere along the line, you might have sold it to get out. But the stock market can't do that. The stock market can fall very quickly, or it can go up very quickly as well. But buying on margin is you can purchase more stock than you normally might by putting up a portion of the money. In the 1920s, the margin requirements were lower. You might only have to put up 20% of the stock value, and you could control that share of stock. Again, if the stock goes up, you sell, and you pay off the loan and you keep the money, okay? But if the stock falls a little bit at 20%, then the stockbroker will call you and say, you need more money.
Can you sell those?
Usually, yes.
How
But
do you
the
wanna-
problem,
After
send you a check. But what if it's nothing? You know, they call you, say, look, you have a margin call. You must pay this money, okay? And if you don't, they will sell the stock. And this is exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened during the 1920s and during the stock market crash, where people had invested enormous amounts of money in the stock market on margin. They only put up a little bit. The market turned down a little bit. The brokers called up and said, we need more money. And people said, we don't have it. So they sold. If everybody dumps their stock, what happens to the value? Boom, goes down until someone will buy it. So the stock market in the 1920s crashed tremendously. Stocks that were selling for hundreds of dollars a share were selling for like $5 or $6 a share, virtually overnight. Yes.
Why would anybody buy it?
Well, somebody somewhere along the line will say, I think it's a bargain at this point. Yes.
Then it goes down and down.
Then you lose money, yes. But you know, let's say it's IBM. You say, gee, if it was $100 a share, now it's down to 48. I think it'll go up. But you're not sure. It could get down to $30 a share. You know, but somewhere along the line, someone's going to say, at this price, I think this stock is a bargain. Someone will buy it at some point, hopefully. But if it's a drug company or something like U.S. Surgical, where the stock is pretty high, U.S. Surgical was selling for like $125 a share at one time. Now it's like 65. So it came down very quickly. Now people will buy it and maybe it'll go back up.
Were people selling at 120?
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you had 100 shares and you sold it at 125, you got out when the getting was good. But the stock can come down very, very quickly. Or it can go up very, very quickly as well. Did you ever see the film? It's a silly little film, but Trading Places. Yeah. It's a film about the commodities market in a way, but the market went this way, and then all of a sudden it just whoop, swings the other way, and markets can do that. Markets can go up very, very quickly, and they can come down very, very quickly as well. And in the 1920s, the market crashed, and thousands of small investors were wiped out. And the confidence of the American people was really shaken because of this economic disaster. Most people did not own stocks in the 1920s, but those people that did took a severe loss. All right? What was another theory as to the cause of the Depression? The population of the United States at the time was probably 100 million or so. It was still, there was something though per person. And does come up.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Uneven distribution of income. What was happening to wages during the 1920s? They were going up, but not as fast as the businessmen's investments were going up. They were not keeping pace with productivity. Real wages were in fact going up during the 1920s, but they were not keeping pace with increases in productivity. And the vast majority of people did not have the money to purchase the goods that they were producing. Okay, you can follow that? The vast majority of people did not have the money to purchase the things that they were producing. There was not enough consumer demand to keep the economy going. So this uneven distribution of income seriously damaged the American